we have a couple of lists on our site. We have a broad list and we have a buy list. And it's very important to know the difference between the two if you are indeed going to be your own portfolio manager and you're going to be constructing your very own portfolio, sort of like your own little mutual fund where you get to make all of the decisions. So we get asked a lot, how does FISM choose the companies that we look at that become part of our universe? So the first and most important thing is the companies have to pass the biblically responsible screens. Now, the good news is that only about 10% of publicly traded companies in the U.S. fail one of those screens and are just considered off the table, uninvestable by us. So then we have the other 90% of companies, which is, 8,000 or 9,000 different companies that we could possibly look at. Now, if you've taken a peek at our broad list, you're going to see it doesn't include 8,000 or 9,000 companies. So we've narrowed that down a good bit. But is the broad list something that you should be looking at when you're constructing your portfolio? I would say no. That is one of the most well-known and repeated rules here. If you're going to follow our strategy, is that you shouldn't be buying from the broad list. So the broad list, even though you can see it serves a couple of purposes, because you may be trying to reconstruct a portfolio that was not biblically responsible and, trying to move to one that is. So our broad list is screened once a month for biblically responsible activity, but there are still some companies that we do follow that are not biblically responsible any longer. Now, they were at one time, and the ones that are on there and are listed in red are ones that were biblically responsible at one time and were on our buy list at one time. Now, when we learned of the activity that they were engaged in, we sent out sell alerts and asked partners to sell them, so partners shouldn't still own them. But it'll also give you an idea if you're trying to reconstruct your portfolio of, things that are not biblically responsible. It's not a comprehensive list of what's not biblically responsible. You can find a tool where you can screen that on our website, but go into our resources tab and clicking on Evaluator, where you can screen your investment. So you should never buy from the broad list. And you should know that some of the companies that we do track that are no longer biblically responsible, we do so because maybe we like some of them, and we hope that they will repent, because it is screened once a month. And if companies cease using the money to support things that grieve the heart of the Lord, then they become eligible for investment again. But you also must know that some of the companies on our broad list have never met our fundamental and technical criteria to make it onto the buy list. So don't assume that just because it's there and if it is biblically responsible, that it's something that we are encouraging you to consider. If the companies also, the ones on the broad list, if they've never been on the buy list, it could be possible that they don't get regular and consistent attention paid to them by our analyst. So you are far less likely to get a sell alert on them, since we've never recommended them in the first place. So a lot of good reasons not to shop from the broad list. Now, you should consider the companies that are on the buy list. So our strategy is a mix of fundamental analysis, some technical analysis, and some behavioral analysis. Don't really have a hard, fast ratio for what the breakdown would be, although I can tell you that the company fundamental analysis, looking at the fundamentals of a company, their balance sheet, their debt, their valuation, their earnings, their guidance, all of those things have the highest weighting. So we're looking at companies that have very good, or at least very much improving fundamentals. A small part of companies making it on to the buy list is a little bit of technical analysis. So true technical analysis looks at like chart patterns and different things like that. It is not a huge part of our strategy, but it can be a deciding factor sometimes when we're looking at two companies that are similar, both have good fundamentals. A technical chart pattern would maybe push us in one direction over the other. Also, we look at these companies through a behavioral lens. So we're always on the lookout for events that can cause life-altering losses. And, we stand ready to drastically change our asset allocation models to more heavier cash positions if we can identify things that are happening from a macro standpoint that would cause us to do that. So we look for companies for our buy list. We look for companies that are under our current macro assumptions, meaning we're looking at demographics, trends in the economy. We're looking at trends in the demographic makeup of our country. We're looking at geopolitical events. And if you listen to the show a lot, we look a lot at government spending, changes to government spendings, responses to things like pandemics, all of those things that happen. The political environment that we're in, I mean, it's become more and more bifurcated, and so that is weighing a lot more heavily than it used to on the financial markets. So we're looking for those companies that under the current macro, demographic, and geopolitical assumptions would be companies that you could potentially keep forever, unless, of course, their fundamentals change or the underlying premises that we have about those macro considerations change. And we're looking to put them on the buy list at very good entry points. So I hope that helps you understand a little bit of the difference between the broad list and the buy list. It is very important to understand that and to know how to construct your portfolio.